up, Lewis? Time to put on your tin hats, buckle your seatbelts, because today we are talking about the legendary, the iconic John Titor. In November of 2000, a man under the username timetravel_0 posted to a bunch of online forums talking about time travel. He claimed to be an American military time traveler from the year 2036. He wasn't known as John Titor until 2001, when one of the forums he was posting to required him to enter his name. His posts about time travel included why he stopped in the year 2000, his overall mission, predictions, and warnings for the future. He posted very detailed diagrams of his time machine, even a photograph, and kind of explained how the time machine was supposed to work. It is very likely that this is all just one big hoax and it's just some random internet guy trying to get a rise out of people. But as you will begin to understand as I start talking about this, is it's not just some random guy. The guy that we are talking about, the guy posting to this forums, is very smart. He had a lot of understanding about physics and computer science. It's not just some random kook in his parents' basement. John Titor's time machine was built into the passenger side of a Corvette. It was small but weighed about 500 pounds, so he couldn't just carry it everywhere. That's why he put it in a car. Before we talk about John's mission, let's first discuss his explanation of how the universe functioned and how his time machine worked. John Titor's time machine was created by General Electric, and at the time of his departure in 2036, new and improved models were being created. The general public was informed about time travel in 2034, according to his post on March 2nd, 2001. I'm going to read you guys the first facts that John sent out on July 29th, 1998. I had to fax when I heard other time travelers calling in from any time past the year 2500 AD. Please let me explain. Time travel was invented in 2034. Offshoots of certain successful fusion reactor research allowed scientists at CERN to produce the world's first contained singularity engine. The basic design involves rotating singularities inside of a magnetic field. By altering the speed and direction of rotations, you can travel both forward and backward in time. Time itself can be understood in terms of connected lines. When you go back in time, you travel on your original timeline. When you turn your singularity engine off, a new timeline is created, due to the fact that you and your time machine are now there. In other words, a new universe is created. To get back to your original line, you must travel a split second farther back and immediately throw the engine into forward without turning it off. Some interesting outcomes of this are: 1, you meet yourself. I have done it often, even taken a younger version of myself along for a few rides before returning myself to a new timeline and me going back to mine. 2, you can alter history in the new universe that you have just created. Most of the time the changes are subtle. Sometimes I'll notice car models that don't exist or books that come out late. The oldest one was a skyscraper that wasn't built near a favorite store of mine in New York. Interestingly, when you travel in time, you must compensate for the orbit of the Earth. Since the time machine doesn't move, you have to adjust the engine so you remain on the planet when you turn it off. Unfortunately, it was discovered that anyone going forward in time from my 2036 hit a brick wall in the year 2564. Everyone who has ever been there has reported that nothing exists. When the time machine is turned off, you find yourself surrounded by blackness and silence. Now, most time travelers are trying to figure out where the line went bad by going into the past, creating a new universe, and proceeding forward to see if the same thing results in 2564. It appears the line went bad around the year 2000. I'm here now in this time to test a few theories of mine before going forward. Now for the future you might want to know about. 1. Y2K is a disaster. Many people die on the highways when they freeze to death trying to get to warmer weather. 2. The government tries to keep power by instituting martial law, but all of it collapses when their efforts to bring the power back up fail. 3. A power facility in Denver is able to restart itself, but it's mobbed by hundreds of thousands of people and destroyed. This convinces most that maybe we shouldn't bring the old system back up. 4. A few years later, communal government system is developed after the Constitution takes a few twists. China retakes Taiwan. Israel wins the largest battle for their life, and Russia is covered in nuclear snow from their collapsed reactors. The reason I'm here now is because I believe a nuclear weapon set off by Iraq in the Middle East war with Israel might have something to do with the damaged timeline. I will test that theory and get back to you. Please pray we discover the reason there is no apparent future after 2564. That's pretty creepy if you ask me. Alright, let's take a couple steps back and talk about how he described his time machine to work. Time travel was invented in 2034. Offshoots of certain successful fusion reactor research allowed scientists at CERN to produce the world's first contained singularity engine. The basic design involves rotating singularities inside of a magnetic field. By altering the speed and direction of rotation, you can travel both forward and backward in time. So the basic system of his time machine included dual microsingularities, which are miniature black holes. He's using these miniature black holes to power his gravity distortion unit. So if you don't know anything about CERN is currently creating miniature black holes. The sketchy thing about CERN is if they create a black hole that is slightly larger than they anticipate, it could destroy the entire Earth, but it's fine. Here's another quote from John Titor. "It is believed that all world lines end. It is also thought that parallel world lines that appear to be the same end at different times." February 15th, 2001. Basically, John Titor's explanation of the multiverse is similar to fiber optic light spheres. Each world line is a single point that stretches outward infinitely. So when you time travel, you can go backwards on your timeline, but as soon as you change something, you've created a new line. In my head, I picture this as the save as tool. The original universe stays the same because you didn't overwrite, you just created a copy with some minor adjustments. Because of these minor adjustments, the two universes can seemingly be the same, but since they're independent from each other, they can each have their own ending. John often references the Everett-Wheeler model, aka the theory of universal wave function. This implies that every possible outcome always happens, each event splitting off into its own universe to avoid wave function collapse. John claimed to be on a mission to retrieve an IBM 5100 from the year 1975, which is a basic computer model that has the information to translate computer code and basic programming languages. One supporting piece of evidence for this is this code, this ability to translate computer languages, was an unpublicized feature of the IBM 5100 that would be practically impossible for any person to know in the year 2000 if in fact this was just some random kooky dude on the internet. He also claimed he was specifically picked for this mission because his paternal grandfather was directly involved with the original creation and programming of this computer. He said that he stopped in the year 2000 to collect photos lost in a future war and to warn people about the spread of mad cow disease. He says, "You mean other than the mad cow pandemic, breakthroughs in high energy physics and the unknown functions of the 5100? February 15th, 2001. So post John Titor forums, there was a mild panic regarding CJD, which is the human form of mad cow disease. What sucks about CJD is it has the potential incubation period for about 40 years. So basically, a lot of people could have been exposed to mad cow disease and we won't know about it for a very long time. From my understanding, Alzheimer's and dementia are forms of CJD, but this information wasn't public until 2005, so it is really weird how John had this information before it was public. John also claimed to visit his family multiple times when he was hanging out in the year 2000. Can you imagine, like, someone showing up on your door and being like, hey, you see that kid in the crib over there? That's me. I am from 2036. I think you should sit down. We have a lot of catching up to do. I want to touch a bit on some of the supporting evidence and then some of the debunking evidence because there's quite a bit of both. So the most compelling piece of information that supports the idea that John Titor is who he says he is his prediction of the Columbia space disaster that happened in 2003. He says, "Care to share with me how you solved the overheating problem on your space plane?" February 13th, 2001. The Columbia Space Shuttle disaster happened after a piece of foam struck the shuttle's left wing during takeoff. The superheated air breached the damaged wing, causing the shuttle to disintegrate. So John also predicted that Stephen Hawking would change his theory about black holes and admit they didn't function the way that he thought they did, and as you guys know, this actually did happen before he passed away. John also had predictions that didn't come true, like a civil war that was supposed to start in 2004 and end in 2015 because of a nuclear war. A war in 2015 killed nearly 3 billion people. The people that survived grew closer together. November 4th, 2000. On N Day, Washington, D.C. and Jacksonville, Florida are specifically mentioned as being hit. After the war, Omaha, Nebraska was the new U.S. capital. Titor never said the exact cause of the war, but mentioned border clashes and overpopulation. As a result of many conflicts, there were no official Olympics after 2004. However, it appears they will be revived in 2040. January 29th, 2001. So as we all know, the US Olympics were not shut down in 2008, but they were almost shut down in 2008 because of Tibetan protests in China. So there were two specific things that John Titor mentioned that might have predicted 9/11. He says, "None of the things I have said will be a surprise. They were set in motion 10, 20, even 30 years ago. Are you really surprised to find out Iraq has nukes now, or is that just BS to whip everyone up to accepting the next war?" February 5th, 2001. If you remember from the facts I read earlier, he says, "The oldest one was a skyscraper that wasn't built near a favorite store of mine in New York." The quote about the skyscraper seems like a huge stretch to me because it's just so vague, and he only mentions one skyscraper. I think that if he was talking about the Trade Center, he would have mentioned both towers. John Titor also alluded to the fact that Y2K didn't happen in our universe because his interference with our timeline. This is one example about how different outcomes will happen if you change the past. So now I'm going to read you guys another post by John Titor. "When the day comes for my prediction to be realized, it will either happen or not. If it does happen, then your ability to judge your environment is crippled by your acceptance of me as a knower of all things and gifted with the ability to tell the future. If I am wrong, then everything I have said that might possibly have made you think about your world in a different way is suddenly discredited. I do not want either. Although I do have personal reasons for being here and speaking with you, the most I could hope for is that you recognize the possibility of time travel as a reality. You are able to change your world line for the better or for the worse, just as I am." February 2nd, 2001. So do we believe John Titor is who he says he is, or this is just one elaborate hoax? In 2008, private investigator Mike Lynch found no registry evidence, past or present, of any individual named John Titor. He did, however, identify the John Titor Foundation, a company formed on September 16th, 2003, with no office or address other than a rented post box in Kissimmee, Florida. An IP address from one of the forums John Titor posted to also traced back to Kissimmee, Florida. In 2009, a report by John Houston, the Hoax Hunter website, named Larry Hebert, a Florida entertainment lawyer, as the CEO of the foundation. He thinks that Larry and his brother Maury Hebert, a computer scientist, were very likely the men behind John Titor. There were so many people looking into this, trying to figure out where they were at each time of the posting. People even went to their office buildings and took pictures. It was all very chaotic. I'm going to show you guys a clip of Larry Hebert talking about this.
I've been asked about my son's involvement, and I was recently interviewed in a Hustler article, and I've got a copy of it here. For the most part, when I got hired, I didn't take much credence in what was happening. I figured I'd get paid as I do for a lot of clients. And then my son, who's 19 years old, his name is Brendan, is now a student at the University of Central Florida, and a computer geek, spends a lot of time on the net and started going through the sites and so on, and said, "Dad, you won't believe what's going on out there." And so he started showing me some of the sites, and that's how I've kept up with what's going on, really. I spent a lot of time on the computer, but most of my time is spent answering emails and doing the contract work that I do normally. He's told me that people have investigated where I live, where I work. For the record, right now, my offices are now here in downtown Orlando on the 14th floor of the Wachovia Bank building. So for anybody seeing this, please stop going to look in Celebration. I have a small office there, but physically I'm here. Apparently people have taken pictures of the office I used to occupy, which has kind of annoyed the people that I used to work with over there. So that I can't believe how far this thing has gotten. He's told me that some folks have researched his activities when he was in high school. He did speech and debate. There's a whole thread about what days he was in different cities and speech and debate tournaments, and so they tried to tie whether or not he could have been the poster. One of the things that was written up in the Hustler interview was the fact that maybe he is the John Titor himself perpetrating the hoax. As far as I know, no. I wouldn't put it past my son to do anything, but I don't think so. I think that it's just a coincidence at this point that some of the things that he's done coincide with some of the postings that have been out there.
So there's a lot more information circulating about John Titor and Larry Hebert and Maury Hebert. I have all of my sources linked down below, so if you want to look into it yourself, you definitely should. I would love to know what you guys think about this, if you think it's a hoax or if you think John Titor really is a time traveler. If this is legit, it explains a lot. It explains why we experience deja vu, alter vu, the Mandela effect, but I guess we won't really know until 2036 if time travel is ever invented. Anyways, that wraps up today's video. I'm glad you got to see me.